Hello everyone, welcome to the second session of EEP Africa 2024 Knowledge Week. My name is Jussi Widing, I'm the fund manager for EEP Africa, based here in Helsinki, Finland. And yesterday we started the week with the session on cooling solutions. Today the main focus will be on our upcoming call for proposals, but before reviewing the agenda in more detail, let's go over a couple of housekeeping rules. So GoToWebinar, the platform we are using, automatically mutes audience. So if you are desperately looking for the mic, it doesn't exist. Sorry about that. However, you can submit questions during the presentations we are giving. And in the end of the session, we've reserved some time for questions and answers. And we will also publish a frequently asked questions document on our website when we launch the call. So use that question function as you see fit. The session will be recorded and shared with the attendees, and we also plan to upload it into YouTube later on for those who might not be able to attend but are still interested to hear what we talked about today. So let's start. Today, I'll start with a quick EEP Africa introduction for those participants who probably don't know us that well. Then I'll quickly launch our alumni network, which is a new kind of initiative we are about to starting. After that, we'll have a moment to recognize kind of the EEP Africa awardees of last year, so the project of the year and the rising energy leaders. After which I'll pass on the floor to my colleague Susanne Haunsel, who will take you through the call for proposals process and any kind of potential good to know tips for interested applicants. We assume that most kind of attendees for today's session are tuning in because of the upcoming call for proposals. So let's start with the introduction. EEP Africa is a multi-donor trust fund funded by the donors listed there, so namely Austria, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, NDF, Norway and Switzerland. Our fund period is open-ended, which in practice means that we can continue our activities as long as our donors keep resourcing us. Our focus region is Southern and Eastern Africa, and our niche in the market is really to take that early stage risk for companies using clean energy solutions before they can kind of access financing from more mature investors. The EEP Africa team consists of 3 organizations. The fund manager is NDF, Nordic Development Fund, where myself sits at. And then kind of our feet on the ground is provided by SNV and Open Capital, who are our implementation support partners. So most of the team sits in Nairobi, and then we have also one portfolio manager, Giesta, who was coordinating the yesterday's or moderating the yesterday's session. She's based in Harare. We have 3 kind of major activities how we kind of distribute our financing. The core of our activities is providing financing, grants and repayable grants through open competitive calls for proposals. So in practice, we are a challenge fund. Susan will go in later in more detail what that financing means, what we are looking for, but in short, we can give grants between 200,000 to 1 million. The typical grant size is closer to, I would say, 300 to 500,000. And then we always expect some co-financing from our grantees. So depending on the maturity of the company and how early stage project it is, we expect minimum 30% co-financing and a bit more from kind of more mature companies. That would be then minimum 50. And part of that financing can be in kind if you are a very early stage company doing pilot projects. But as mentioned, Susan will go in more detail about that later. Then we also have budget to provide business development support and investment facilitation for our kind of portfolio companies. It's a well-known fact that money alone doesn't take you too far. Then you also need networks, you need introductions. So when you are in our portfolio, we will continuously assess where you might have some difficulties, where you might face some barriers, and then we can, on an ad hoc manner, when need be, provide some business development support for you, mainly through our implementation partner, Open Capital Advisors. And then we also actively talk to investors on the market, trying to understand what new investors are coming in, what new funds current investors are setting up, and kind of what is their sweet spot in terms of what they are looking for. And then we can do kind of pre-screening of our portfolio, provide introductions as we see fit. And thirdly, we have a mandate to learn from our activities and disseminate that knowledge. So we actively try to publish launch publications when we feel that we have important things to say and we've learned some great lessons. We try to create some events for networking, for knowledge sharing, and in general we try to work through partnerships on this, especially on this third pillar, because when you work together, it's easier to amplify the lessons rather than kind of saying things purely from the perspective of EEP Africa. And then also we'll try to provide visibility to our portfolio and also our past portfolio, as long as we know how they are doing. And I think that then brings a segue to the alumni network that I will talk in a couple of more about in a couple of slides. But just to give you a little taste on how our portfolio looks like, this shows the kind of geographic distribution and technology focus of the 32 companies that passed through our investment committee in a last year's call. So we have a kind of mandate for diverse portfolio, and as you can see on the left side, there is quite a good country coverage in our geographic focus countries, as well as many different type of technologies. So in general, EEP Africa is technology agnostic. We can finance anything with biogas, solar, wind, you name it, as long as it's renewable energy or energy efficiency. And here we've kind of mapped out a bit the purpose of those technologies. So a lot of productive use of energy, mobility has been quite we've been receiving a lot of applications in last years, and then clean cooking is usually quite a standard element also in our portfolio. And finally, what does success look like for us? We don't necessarily need big results. If you are applying for our grant for a kind of scale-up projects or replication projects on something that is already proving in one market, but you want to scale it up in the more nascent market, then we expect that you do some sales, you create more jobs and so forth. But if you're a very early stage company, piloting, trying to kind of enter the market, then we are really looking at success through the lens of investment readiness. Are you more investment ready in the end of the grant as you were in the beginning of grant? So we hope that your team will come out stronger. You have more relevant investment documents in place. You found that market fit with our grant that then will allow another investor to come in and scale you to those kind of, let's say, SDG numbers. So on the right, you see some examples of the indicators we measure, but we expect to get more of those indicators from scale-up projects rather than early stage pilot projects. And as we provide early stage risk financing, we expect a degree of failure. But failure for us is a failure only if we don't learn from it. So if you do a project, it doesn't go as well as planned, but you clearly use that still to bring lessons to the sector or pivot your business model to something that becomes successful later, then we still consider your project as success. And then we can quickly cover the alumni network launch. So I alluded to this a bit during the activity pillar slide. So we have a big alumni historically. I think EEP Africa has funded, I think currently more than 250 or even 270 projects since 2010 when it started. And for us, it's important to know what happens to some of these grantees when they exit our portfolio. Which one of them are still active, which ones are growing, and how they are growing, why they are growing. So we've established now a LinkedIn group called EEP Africa Alumni Network, where we are actively inviting past grantees, preferably management level representation, to keep in contact with them. So the purpose is really to kind of bring former grantees together to facilitate exchange of success stories, challenges, lessons learned, networking, and so forth. And the carrot of this approach is that if we know how our past grantees are doing, we can still bring them up when we talk to investors and help them with investor matchmaking. We can still bring them to our kind of case studies or in our publications to enhance their visibility, or invite them to our kind of side events or matchmaking events that we might do together with our partners on the sidelines of major industry events. So I would say it's a low maintenance kind of. It doesn't require much work from you. And we are very happy to know how our past grantees are doing. So if you've had an EEP Africa grant in the past, then please go and join that network. So that concludes, I would say, the introductory part of this presentation. And then we will move to the awards of the past year, which will consist of announcing the Project of the Year awards, as well as the Rising Energy Leader recognition. And to give you a little bit of background, the EEP Africa Project of the Year celebrates outstanding achievement by an EEP Africa portfolio company. It can be a current company, or it can be a company which has recently, in the past couple of years, closed their project. There has been an internal nomination process to bring in 4 companies who all have pitched to this external panel of judges, who then make the final selection on the winners. And the judges this year were Ada Marmion from Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, Daphne Pitt from Get Invest, Jacob Lorenzen from Nordic Development Fund, and Niamolo Abagi from CLASP. And the nominees were asked to demonstrate significant and verifiable achievement during the past year in terms of innovation, in terms of delivery, impact, and or fundraising. So I would now like to pass the floor to Ada Marmion from Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund to present the Scale-up Project of the Year. And just before doing that, I'll quickly show you the shortlist. And I would say, in my personal opinion, all of these companies are worthy of the recognition, but only 2 can be selected. Paridi is a local woman-led company that provides solar-powered refrigeration solutions for off-grid meat markets in East Africa. Green Impact Technologies is a local startup that is developing innovative deployment mechanisms for clean energy technologies in Malawi, with the focus on marginalized communities. Haniji is a local women-led startup in Tanzania that produces eco-friendly and cost-saving cooking and fuel solutions for schools, restaurants, and small businesses. And finally, Sokofresh is a social enterprise that offers cold storage solutions and the market linkage to small and medium-scale farmers in Kenya. But now, actually, I think we will start with the Scale-up Project of the Year, and that will be Niamolo Abagi, Senior Program Manager from CLASP. So I'll invite Niamolo to present the Scale-up Project of the Year. Thanks.
Thanks so much, JC, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. It's really a great honor to be part of this forum today and to be part of the judging panel. And I completely agree with JC's reflections. I think for us within the judging panel, it was really impressive to see all of the startups and scale-ups that were participating. It was definitely a difficult decision because there are just so many, most of them are doing really, really amazing work in different places. So really congratulations to everybody who was shortlisted. And so, I'm here to present the Scale-up of the Year. And the Scale-up of the Year is really goes to the company that demonstrates significant and verifiable achievement during the past year. So this is in terms of innovation, delivery, impact, and also fundraising. And so we looked at different input, and the companies were also able to present to the judges. So we were looking at companies that were able to show significant growth. And it's my honor and privilege really to announce that the Scale Up of this year goes to SocoFresh. SocoFresh is a social enterprise that offers cold storage solutions and market linkages to small and medium scale farmers in Kenya. They really exist to address the issues of post-harvest losses and poor market access for millions of smallholder farmers. So SocoFresh is a company that we as Efficiency for Access have been closely following for years. We found out about them in the early years where they received an initial, where the company they partner with, Ecozen, received a research grant from us, and through that developed initial partnerships with SocoFresh for some of the initial hubs. And I think that through this judging process, what particularly stood out for me, is we really think a lot and talk a lot about, the trajectory of the early innovators that we support, and kind of like what is the exit strategy, what is the sustainability of it. So it's particularly exciting to see SocoFresh's growth path. And in the past year, they used their EEP grant to launch 6 more hubs across Kenya. And with this, they were also able to close their first equity investment by Safaricom Spark. And most importantly, I think a lot of companies, it really boils down to not only the technology, the service, but also the team behind it. And they truly are a great team. So congratulations to SocoFresh. And I'd like to hand it over to Dennis, their CEO, to give us a few words and accept the award.
Thank you so much. This is such a great privilege. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this recognition. It's a significant recognition. EEP has been quite a significant partner for us in terms of catalyzing the growth of SocoFresh. And so even as we receive this partnership, just want to thank everyone who has been involved in supporting SocoFresh from the initial stages until where we are, both our partners and our investors. And I think our commitment remains strong to be able to make cold storage and market linkage services accessible to smallholder farmers across Kenya and the rest of the region. And I think even with this recognition, it will refuel us and re-energize us as we undertake this difficult but time-sensitive assignment to reduce post-harvest losses and unlock increased farmer incomes through our services. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dennis, and congratulations on our behalf also. I would like to ask a couple of questions from both of the process of the year winners. So I'll ask this now first from you, and I'll ask them both questions at the same time. So if there is like one thing that you would like to highlight, what EEP Africa grant kind of helped you to do, kind of in terms of taking your business to next level, what would that be? And then considering that we most likely have quite a few potential future applicants tuning into this webinar or later checking it online from the recording, what would be your kind of main advice or lesson that you would like to share with future EEP Africa applicants?
Thanks. I think one of the most significant, so there are a number of benefits of having gotten support from EEP. One of the most critical ones is the funding that enabled us to test our business model across different value chains. So by being able to invest in CapEx and set up 6 different hubs, we were able to actually move from testing our use case for one value chain to testing the use case for 4 value chains at a time. And we are looking at the utilization rates and other metrics to help us really determine what is a commercially viable path for SocoFresh. That was critical, and the outcome of that is what laid the foundation for our first equity investment, because we are able to really prove that we have the data to show that this is a scalable business. And for anyone applying for EEP, I think my advice is that one, really look at how EEP can help you to test your most riskiest assumptions. that can help you to really build evidence of commercial viability if you're an early stage business. I think EEP has such a great team that will connect you to networks of different alumni, investors, and other partners to really rally everyone behind enabling your success. But utilize the funding to really be able to build the right foundation for the business, test what ordinarily you may not be able to test without such grant financing, and see it as an opportunity to be able to catalyze the business growth and to bring in future investments. Thank you, Juicy.
Thanks a lot. Then I think we can move to the next project of the year announcement. So that would be the project of the year's startup. So I'll pass it on to Ada Marmion from Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund. Ada, please go ahead.
Thank you, Juicy, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the continent. I am very happy to be here today and to share from ACF our reflections and our contribution to this selection. So we were asked as judges to really analyze from the 4 different finalists which one has demonstrated the deepest level of resilience and adaptive capacity in implementing their program funded by EEP. What has been what has the company developed in terms of strategic, innovative, and meaningful partnerships to advance their impact and their business, be it in their value chain, in their sector, or with complementary partners outside of the business as usual partners. Then what are early proof of demonstration of market fit of their business models on the market, and also consider the ones that have managed to successfully fundraise from other sources, be it grant or more commercial or catalytic or commercial capital. And of course, it was a very difficult choice. We took quite some time for the deliberation because the 4 companies presented very strong case and very powerful impact programs. But we settled as a team for Baridi, which is a local woman-led company that provides solar-powered refrigeration solutions for off-grid meat and fish markets in East Africa. And I think the EEP project was mostly focusing on the meat value chain. What we thought was particularly relevant was really that Baridi demonstrated both the pay-as-you-store business model and also tested the lease-to-own business model through its EEP project. So really testing what would be the price point, the unit economics, the viability, the access to customers, and the impact of those 2 different business models, and how does that impact their financial structuring as a company, the way that they reach out to their customers and structure themselves. They've also developed some strategic partnership with upstream partners in terms of the manufacturer of the cold storage units. And we did find it very interesting as well that the company is not only women-owned and led, but also looking to integrate women at various levels in their business models, and really matching the way they empower different potential clients that could be women to go up the value chain or be empowered. So that were, I think, the 3 main reasons why we thought that you had the most powerful innovation. And I think you are contributing, Baridi, to really de-risking and demonstrating how the cold storage as a service different value proposition could work in Kenya. So thank you so much for that. And I think I'm to invite.
Yeah, I can step in with the sad announcement of Tracy being currently on a business trip, the CEO and founder of Paridi in Tokyo, and unfortunately she cannot tune in at the moment. The schedules don't match. She was yesterday part of the cooling session, so whoever joined that our yesterday's Knowledge Week session, Tracy was there talking. But we will publish a profile on both the Project of the Year winners as well as the Rising Energy Leader that will be presented soon on our website, so you'll get to read a bit more about Paridi's journey with us, kind of how that grant helped them to do what they do and kind of tell their story. But unfortunately, we don't have Tracy in person now answering those questions that I had. So thanks, Ada. I propose that we'll move forward with the agenda, which then leaves a bit more time for questions also in the end. Thanks. So next, then I would like to pass the mic to Susan Hounsell, the Head of Portfolio of EEP Africa, to present the Rising Energy Leader of 2023. Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And also congratulations on my end to the Project of the Year winners for these well-deserved awards. In addition to our Project of the Year, it's my honor to now also introduce the Rising Energy Leader of the Year for 2023. This is an internal award with the jury consisting of EEP Africa team members, and it honors young individuals who are working for one of our EEP Africa grantees. They have been nominated by our portfolio managers for their outstanding contributions to the success and implementation of the company's EEP Africa project. In this year around, we have one Rising Energy Leader of the Year, and that is, next slide please. With that, I should say that this award this year is going to Precious Zuma, who is the Business Development and Marketing Manager with PowerLife. PowerLife is one of EEP Africa's grantees from the 2020 call for proposals. And for those who have followed us for a while, you might remember that PowerLife was EEP Africa's startup of the Project of the Year in 2021. And Precious has been one of the people at PowerLife contributing to their achievements in Zimbabwe, where PowerLife has been distributing over 4,000 solar home systems and 1,600 productive use of energy systems, and all this in rural areas during the COVID and after the COVID-19 pandemic. PowerLife is also a women-led business with 71% of employees being women, and Precious is one of them, and has impressed us through her dedication.
Quick question, Susan. There's a bit of an echo. Could you check your kind of mic settings, at least on our end?
Okay, sorry about that. Let me try. I'm not entirely sure how to fix that. Then maybe disconnect my other screen. Is this better?
There is still kind of a echo coming from the back. Yes.
Then I need to check 1 second. Give me one moment.
It was okay during the testing, so I don't know if something changed.
No, I don't think so.
I think now it's good. I don't know what you did. Magic happened. The echo disappeared, at least on my side.
Right, okay. Then let me continue. Great, but do let me know if there's any further issues. So yes, Precious, she's impressed us through her dedication to PowerLife's mission, and also leading their marketing efforts through what was a very challenging time in most countries in the world. And she's also managed to really highlight her personal growth during this time, which we very much appreciated. So Precious, congratulations for this recognition. I'll hand it over to you, and maybe you could also tell us a little bit what you'd advise other young people in the energy access space on how to make their way in this sector.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you to EEP for this prestigious award. It's truly a humbling experience for me to be here accepting this today. And I'm incredibly grateful to my bosses, to the Power Live team, to all our stakeholders, and most importantly to EEP Africa for this recognition. So I would say advice to other energy experts. My advice to other energy experts would be patience and perseverance. In our line of work, results are not instant. You know, they come after a long time. It's just like farming. So it takes a really long time for us to get traction and clean energy. So it's important to persevere and work hard and keep at it and just be patient with it. I'd also say it's important to be customer centric. It's essential to understand our customers and their particular cultural norms and everything else that affects them, so that we can be more mindful of the local culture where our customers are, so that we don't offend them or do any harm to them while we provide the services that we provide. And also, it's important to regularly keep in touch with our customers as well, so that we listen to them and tailor our products and solutions to better serve them, because no one else better knows what they need except them. So I'd say customer centricity, patience, and perseverance. That's what I advise other people to focus on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Precious. Definitely valuable advice and something to take on board for all of us. Thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Great. With this, we'll conclude the part on the EEP Africa Awards. And for those of you who would like an opportunity to one day be EEP Africa's Project of the Year or be named a Rising Energy Leader, we will soon be launching our next annual call for proposals for this year. Let me therefore walk you through the process of the 2024 call, and also share some lessons and observations from last year's call for proposals. If we go to the next slide. Great. So for 2024, and for those who've followed last year's call, the structure has stayed quite similar for this call for proposals, but the timelines have shifted a little bit. Last year, we launched the expression of interest stage in April. This year, we are planning to already open the platform on the 19th of February for your submission of EOIs. We will give you about 4 weeks to submit your expression of interest, and the hard deadline will be on the 15th of March at 1 p.m. Helsinki time. So please set your alarms, set your calendars. At that point, the platform will close and we won't be able to allow any further submissions. We will then proceed as the EEP Africa team to do eligibility checks on all the submissions, and also then proceed to evaluation of the eligible expressions of interest. And I'll get to the eligibility criteria in a moment. We hope to communicate to the long listed applicants by end or mid-May, and then have a boot camp to prepare you for the pitch interviews. These will happen towards the end of May, beginning of June. Will take about 2 to 3 weeks to interview the long-listed companies. And based on these interviews, which will be about 30 minutes long, 15 minutes presentation, 15 minutes Q&A with the EEP Africa team panel. After those pitch interviews, we'll then come to a short list, and that will be communicated in early to mid-June. The shortlist candidates will then get an opportunity to submit for proposals. We'll have scheduled about 5 weeks for proposal submission. And in parallel, we will already start the due diligence process with checks on the environmental, social safeguards and governance structures in your organization. We do some reference checks, and we might even do some site visits, depending on needs. We will run various webinars along the way to sort of keep explaining what we require at which stage for the full proposal and for the due diligence in particular. We will then take the projects to our investment committee in September, and based on their decision, we will then seek a no objection from the Nordic Development Fund and proceed to contracting. Contracting is realistically likely to happen from about December onwards. This year has shown us that the preparation of the annexes takes a little bit of time, but hopefully will be a little bit quicker still than this year. And these timelines are all indicative. We'll give more specific dates in the call for proposal guidelines, which will be published on the EEP Africa website in the coming weeks. We can move over to the next slide. Thank you. As you may be aware, we hadn't run any calls for proposals as EEP Africa since 2020. And so last year it marked a relaunch with some revisions to the process. So for example, earlier calls for proposals were heavier on the concept note stage, and we transitioned to an expression of interest stage with a lighter format. Based on running that process, we made some minor tweaks and have some lessons learned and observations that may be useful for you to consider as you're looking into applying for EEP Africa funding. We've made some tweaks, but some things we can change. The call for proposals for EEP Africa does remain highly competitive. The win ratio remains at around 6%. Out of the 507 EOIs that were submitted originally, 20% were ineligible, and we ended up interviewing 80 companies, and ultimately 32 got approved by our investment committee, and we're currently taking them through the contracting process. What we also noticed is that we had some companies that had submitted multiple applications through their subsidiaries, or came in as partners in multiple applications and some as lead applicants. So this is also something where we had to clarify some of the criteria to avoid that. What we also realized is that some of the questions need simplification and streamlining. We noticed some repetition in some of the answers. Excuse me, sorry. We noticed some repetition in some of the answers, and also a bit too much focus on context instead of the project itself. So the questions that we'll be asking for this call for proposals will be a bit more to the point and specific, so that it also gives you a chance to really demonstrate that your project is in active development and that it is additional to the sector and to your company as well, and that you have a clear pathway towards profitability for your project as well. What we also realized on the positive side, even though the revised process is quite labor intensive in terms of the evaluations, feedback processes, etc., all those webinars, the feedbacks, the reference checks, they've really supported proposal quality and helped our investment committee to make a more informed decision on the final cohort. And the pitch interviews in particular were key for us to identify the solid shortlists in the first place, but also understand where the support needs are so that we could provide some targeted feedback also during the proposal development already. So overall, I think the changes have been good, and we keep tweaking and improving the process as we move along. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, what sort of advice and guidance can we then give to our applicants for funding? First and foremost, our most important piece of advice would be to very carefully read the call for proposal guidelines, the frequently asked questions, and the project implementation manual. Those 3 documents will be posted on the EEP Africa website very soon, and they will really help you to avoid any kind of misunderstandings, clarify key questions already, and avoid that you risk disqualification on grants that could otherwise have been avoided. In the meantime, while we wait for those documents to be posted and become available, I can share some key things already that we can that you can look at. So first off, am I eligible to apply? Who can apply for EEP Africa funding? We are looking for commercially oriented businesses, so registered legal entities aiming to run a sustainable business. companies, startups, social enterprises. If you're a non-for-profit, an NGO, an academia, or a government institution, you can apply as a partner, but you wouldn't be eligible as a lead applicant. We also require for your business to have been registered at least 6 months before the EOI opening stage. So you need to count backwards from mid-February. Have you registered in time, then you're eligible. Otherwise, we'd advise that you wait for next year, because this is really our first point of eligibility check. Geographically, we are limited to the 17 target countries. We used to cover 15. We have dropped the Seychelles from our list of eligible countries because they are no longer eligible for ODA financing, so we cannot fund projects there anymore. But we've added Madagascar, Comoros, and Mauritius, and therefore completed the Eastern and Southern African geography with EEP Africa coverage now. Your projects can stretch for about 2 years, but we are quite flexible. We can extend if we see that a project is making good progress, and we'd like to rather see the project completed than be very strict on that end date. UC already mentioned we're technology agnostic. Anything that is linked to renewable energy and or energy efficiency is welcome as a proposed technology. And the types of projects that we fund include feasibility studies and pilot projects, replication and scale-up projects. And I'll share a few more details around the eligibility of those or the conditions around those projects in a moment. What will cause you to be excluded from proceeding? One is we will not accept projects that increase any use of fossil fuels and or prolong the technical or economic lifetime of heat and power production using fossil fuels, and that also includes LPG. And we also do not fund projects that mainly focus on market space, capacity building, trainings, or policy development. And while we do fund pilot projects and feasibility studies, we cannot finance R&D. And we also would like to see a minimum viable product in place, or a basic business model that you can build on. Lastly, and that is also very important, technologies and business models that have already been proven at scale in a market should probably not require grant financing anymore, at least not from a mechanism such as EEP Africa. I'm thinking, for example, solar home systems or solar lanterns in Kenya, one of the most mature off-grid solar markets out there, or improved biomass stoves. Those kind of technologies in certain markets would not be eligible anymore, but if you were to, for example, apply for a scaling project for solar in a massive market like Malawi or so, then we would consider them. Next slide, please. What can the EEP Africa grant cover? The grant can be quite flexible in the budget overall, and really depends on the vision of the grantee. The funding is really meant to help you on your journey to becoming a successful and sustainable business, and that should be reflected in also how flexible we are. The grant can cover personnel cost, fixed assets, acquisition of goods, external services, office costs, transportation, etc. On the BDS side and the external services, I would highlight that UC mentioned earlier that BDS, business development support, is one of our key pillars. We have a separate budget for that. But for example, you can here add things such as legal services or other external services that are required for your project to be successful. What we do ask in terms of the budget is that the costs clearly relate to the proposed project scope that you're implementing, and that you keep your budget balanced across different categories. So we wouldn't like to see a budget that has 70 or 80% personnel cost or high capex cost for acquisition of assets. We recommend that you shift some of that to the co-financing budget. Another thing to note here is that feasibility studies and any kind of budgets over 500,000 euros will always be repayable. It will be at 0% interest. It will be fairly flexible at completion of the project. That's when the repayment should start. But since last year's investment committee, we also require that budgets that are being requested for the acquisition of goods and inventory, that those are also repayable. So then you'll have a mixed budget of grant and repayable grant. These requirements are all to show some more skin in the game for our applicants, in addition to your co-financing. And if we go to the next slide. In terms of co-financing, we have 3 approaches, and that is a slight change here from last year's call for proposals. Co-financing requirements will depend on the project type, as well as the maturity level of your company. In terms of project types, as I mentioned, we have feasibility studies, pilots, replication, and scale-up projects. And in terms of company maturity, you can already look at the 2023 guidelines. Not much has changed there. We classify companies as either startup at commercialization or scaling stage, or as a mature company. Now, all feasibility studies, scale-up, and replication projects will require at least 30% cash co-financing. But if you have a pilot project and you're an early stage company, then you can request for 20% in-kind contribution of your total project cost. What do we classify as an early stage company? We made that definition quite generous. So if you're a startup or your company is a commercialization or scaling stage, then you can request for that in-kind contribution. If you are a mature company, and if you are applying for funding that is over 500,000 euros, then we will ask for half of that project cost to be cash flow financing. So there's no option for in-kind contribution here. If you have further questions on this differentiation, then please do ask those questions in the Q&A. If we go to the next slide from here. Beyond the budget structure and the co-financing, what else do we look at when we are evaluating your application? What are our desired grantee characteristics? So co-financing and repayability, as I mentioned, they're all key aspects that determine skin in the game. But we also look at the proposed teams and partners that are involved in the project implementation. Are their roles clear, the responsibilities clearly defined, including any vacancies that you might see for the project team. But what we also want to see is if there's strong local presence of your team and a clear understanding of your customers. And then beyond that, really looking at how transparent are you in your business development support needs. We will not score the section in the EOI and proposal that will ask you about your business development support needs in terms of capacity building, training needs. Where do you see your gaps in your company? We are working with early stage companies. It is normal that there will be gaps. And so we have that ring-fenced budget to support you on that together with Open Capital advisors. Other aspects that we consider is whether the budget to get this project underway is really required for your company. Is there additionality? Is there a clearly defined need? And also if your proposed project outputs are realistic and do they really pave the way for sustainable growth? EEP Africa provides catalytic financing for companies. We're not a results-based financing mechanism that aims to deliver scale. So we really want to see those realistic project outputs for ensuring sustainable growth. And then last but not least, on a, I guess, more personal level, we look for active, transparent, and respectful communication and an enthusiastic and committed team and leadership from our grantees. You will find that the EEP Africa team works very much along those values, and we look for grantees who also reflect this. Now, in terms of the projects, what are desirable projects for EEP Africa? We look for projects that are clearly in active development. Have you demonstrated that you've already taken steps and action towards getting your project underway? If it's just an idea on paper and no action has been taken, then we wouldn't consider that an active development. But can you demonstrate that you have something there already? however minimal it might be. Projects should also be innovative and not have been proven at scale in the focus market. I mentioned that already when we were talking about the exclusion list. They should mitigate or help to adapt to climate change and have a minimum viable product or basic business model in place. They should be locally driven either through a local team, local company. The lead applicant is locally on the ground, fantastic, or you have a strong local partner. That is also acceptable. And then in terms of the target community, the project should promote inclusiveness within the business itself, within the company, but also along the value chain and reach the bottom of the pyramid and just generally demonstrate and produce significant co-benefits for the local communities. So that for us would be an ideal project. So what can you do in the meantime while you wait for the expression of interest stage to open? You can get your documents ready and get all the information that you'll need to apply and go through the application process. These are documents here that you will require at either the EOI stage or at the latest at proposal stage. You will need your company registration and tax identification registration, and both of them have to have been from 6 months before the EOI opening date. That's our first point of eligibility check, as I mentioned earlier. We'll also require an account holder confirmation. And if you have to deal with any kind of land rights, if that is relevant for you, do please clarify on that as well, what you're holding there or what you will need to acquire. Letters of intent from project partners, be it for project implementation, but also for co-financing, can really strengthen your application. So do submit these, and there will be an option at the EOI stage already to submit that. And we do understand that we work with early stage companies. Not all of you will have audited accounts ready, but do please have a clear overview of your basic financial data that you can submit alongside with your expression of interest. And for mature companies, an audited report will be mandatory. In terms of the project itself, do have a clear plan for your licenses and permits that you will require to run your business as well as your project. What kind of licenses and permits are needed? Which ones have you already secured? If you are still missing some, which authorities will issue them? What is the lead time to actually secure them? You will be required to then, you don't have everything, have to have everything in place from the outset, but as you proceed through the project, you'll be required to clearly identify the milestones at which you will provide these documents. And linked to that, also have clarity on your risks and identify appropriate mitigation measures from the get-go. We will monitor these, review and monitor these quite carefully. And get together your contact information with past and current investors and or mentors, people who can speak on your behalf. We will do reference checks as part of our due diligence process. And so that is really, really helpful for us and for you as well as an applicant. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So not taking away from the Q&A part of the session, but there are a handful of questions that we typically get asked, and we'll just try to answer them already now. But do please still put your questions in the Q&A box. A key question that we get asked is, can I apply if I don't have co-financing secured? Yes, you can. In such cases, we expect you to present a clear plan on where you will get your co-financing from. We have at times also helped grantees to secure co-financing through investors. We can make introductions. Just be clear that no money will move until you have that co-financing in place and we can verify it. There will be no advance payments, no disbursements until that co-financing is ready. What can be considered as co-financing? This can come in the form of equity debt or other grants. We will then coordinate with the other grant funders also in terms of results allocation and ensuring no double funding for any activities. As we mentioned before, in-kind contributions are as well an option for pilot projects by early stage companies. Can NGOs, research institutions, or government organizations apply? I did mention that already earlier. No, they cannot, but they can be a partner. Can my company be awarded more than one EEP Africa grant? No. Any lead applicant can only have one active grant at a time. You can, however, be a partner to another application, but please don't be a partner to 5 other applications. That would not look so great either. If you currently have an active EEP Africa grant, you will have to wait until that grant is concluded. The audit has been done, the final disbursement has been made, and then you can reapply. And in line with that, going back to what I also mentioned already earlier, we do discourage companies to apply through multiple local subsidiaries or apply as a partner in a lot of different applications in multiple countries. This puts locally led companies at a disadvantage. It distorts the level playing field, and we would rather see the company to clearly identify which project makes most sense in which geography and where does EEP Africa funding become of most value added to you. The last question here is, are there any target commitments in the call based on fund size, geography, or technology? No, there are not. However, we do aim to have a diversified portfolio per call for proposals, and that's diversified across the technologies, across business models, but also geographies, types of grantees, and their stage of development as well. What are the next steps from here? We do recommend that you sign up for the EEP Africa newsletter and the social media channels, because that's where we'll keep you posted on any kind of updates from the call for proposals in EEP Africa in general. I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Please thoroughly read the guidelines, the implementation manual, and the frequently asked questions document on the website once it is there, and then expect the call launch on the 19th of February. If you feel your business is still too early to be accepted for EEP Africa financing, you can start getting ready for Q1 2025. We will be running these calls on an annual basis for a little while longer. And with that, I think I am handing over to Lucy for the Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, share them now.
Thanks, Susanne. So far, we've gotten 2 questions, so we can start with those. But I assume there might be a couple of more coming in, depending on what kind of questions the slides that you presented are initiating. Or maybe we are getting to a point where our guidelines and such are clear enough that we don't get that many questions. Let's see. But I think that's not the case. There's always issues to clarify. But let's start with the first question. I can take that. Do you give feedback on rejected applications? That would be yes and no. I can give an example how we did it last round. So when we got those 500 applications, we cannot give individual feedback on each and every one of them. So then we usually analyze the call, and then we develop kind of a news article or publication which kind of highlights the general aspects why grantees didn't get approved. We function as a challenge fund, so with a certain type of application, you could be successful this year, but next year it wouldn't fly because there's much more competition from that given country. As Susanne mentioned, we have a mandate to have a diverse portfolio, so even though we get usually most applications in Kenya, we cannot proportionally approve the equivalent amount there, because otherwise half of our portfolio would be Kenya. So that plays also into the mix, kind of the competition on a given year. So if you follow a bit like what kind of projects we have going on, what's happening in your country or market in general, then there are definitely markets where it might be a bit easier to get shortlisted than elsewhere. We are very much focusing on that additionality and kind of added value of our grant. But once you get to the full proposal phase, then if you are not approved in the investment committee, then we can give individual feedback on those kind of applicants, as they've put in much more work into the application. So that's why we try to keep the expression of interest quite light, because we cannot go also with the individual feedback. But once you've completed the full proposal cycle, then for those grantees, naturally, we can give also more individual feedback and potentially even introduce you to other support providers if our investment committee turns you down for some reason. Okay, now more questions are coming in. Maybe Susan, you can take the next one. For feasibility study, can the 30% co-financing be provided by the client or a third party?
I would say so, yes. I think that that's possible, as long as it is verifiable financing that comes in, and that's an option. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there was one slide, and I think this question came in before you reviewed it, which practically, I think it was one of the question slides of what can be co-financing, and it can be debt, it can be equity, it can be another grant, as long as somebody shares the risk with us. That's pretty much the logic. Next question would be, what is considered as in-kind contribution? That would be where I think elaborated in detail in the project implementation manual. We have some language on the call for proposal guidelines also, so I would propose primarily to read those. But Susanne, do you want to give a quick indication, or otherwise I would say you will have a very detailed description in those two documents?
Yeah, indeed, in-kind contribution can be a variety of things, and again, we try to be as flexible as possible on what we can allow there. One key thing that keeps popping up as a question on in-kind contribution is whether or not employee time can be considered an in-kind contribution. And there we clearly say no, unless it's like volunteer time or so, but because of labor laws, for example, you should then transfer that just to cash contribution, because the employees still get a salary. However, shareholder time, for example, if you're compensated through other means, then that can be submitted as in-kind contribution. Any kind of goods and equipment, services that you're getting on a pro bono basis, expertise and knowledge from other sources. If there's no financial receipt or so available, but it can be considered an in-kind contribution. Also, land and facilities can potentially be submitted as in-kind contribution as well, or subscription for software or technology. So there's quite a range here of opportunities to demonstrate in-kind contribution. But the project implementation manual is the final authority on what qualifies. And the portfolio manager who's managing and reviewing your budget.
Yeah, thanks. The next question, I can take this. Does the partnership with an NGO affect the company from qualifying? No, that would be the simple answer. We would be looking at that partnership holistically from the business rational point of view. And there are many cases where the kind of NGO being a partner might really strengthen your application. Let's say you have a good technology, but you don't necessarily have the linkages how to bring it to the market. Let's say you don't have experience working with smallholder farmers, or if it's a technology related to health or education sector, then NGOs might be in a better position to kind of advise who to put that kind of technology in use. So as a partner, they can be a very strong one, but if we kind of get the feeling that it's more kind of a sticker approach, it doesn't really make sense to us or the evaluator who is evaluating your application, like why is this NGO a partner, then obviously that wouldn't kind of fly well. But in general, we are like looking at the holistic project proposal and trying to understand what each partner will bring into the consortium, and hence it can be a strength, and hence it can be a weakness, depends on the concept.
What I would strongly, maybe if I can add to that, you see, what I would strongly recommend when working with NGOs is that always ensure that you have a market-based approach. for your project. So don't consider your NGO as an off-taker of your products that are then distributed for free into the market. We need to see that sustainable business growth opportunity there. So that would be my only caveat on working with an NGO.
Excellent, thanks for that. The next question is again linking to the co-financing. Can cash contributions also be personal financing, or do they have to be other grant or investment as proof of traction? So if I understand it correctly, like, can you put money out of your own pocket? If that's the angle, then for sure yes, and that would demonstrate extremely a lot of skin in the game, and I would say play on your favor. Susanne, anything to add on that?
No, I fully agree. If you can prove the cash reserves, if you can have them in your account, and they're verifiable, then they can be your personal funds as well.
All right, let's check the next one. I would like to get more depth on what is given for granted, in brackets feasibility studies and goods and inventories. Does it mean that companies will be loaned amounts allocated to those budget items?
Yeah, de facto it could be considered a 0% interest loan, but we do keep it as a repayable grant. There are nuances in terms of how it's being recorded in your accounts, but the amounts would be repayable that we give you for the acquisition of goods for feasibility studies and for amounts that are being granted over 500,000 euros. The conditions for the repayable grants are also detailed in the project implementation manual, quite clearly spelled out. Again, you will be discussing the repayment schedule and also the tranches with your portfolio manager as you are working through the development of the contracting documents.
Thanks for that. Next question is about funding established ideas like solar home systems. So I think that links to the example that you gave earlier, Susanne. So the question is, does this so do we finance those or not? So that would be linked to the market. So we would assess it from the market perspective. So solar home systems in Kenya, as Susanne kind of told in her example, wouldn't fly. But if it's a sole pay-as-you-go solar home system model in another market, which is more nascent, where it's not proven at scale, there we could. So whenever we assess a certain technology or certain business model, it's evaluated in the context of the country where you are proposed to run that project. So then you should kind of yourself do a little bit of pre-assessment that the business model of the project that I'm proposing, is it already happening as a business as usual solution in the area where I'm active. Okay, now we are getting many more questions, but we still have a decent amount of time. What is the maximum number of partners to have on the project? I don't think we have any maximum, but again, if you have 10 partners, we might be kind of scratching our heads like, how do you aim to run this project? So again, no minimum or maximum requirements. The project proposal and the added value of the partnerships is assessed on a case-by-case basis.
And maybe just to add to that one, also see who you want to put on as project partners and consider maybe some of them. We had cases where we had consultants as project partners, but maybe they should be better placed under external services in your budget. So just evaluate really the value and where would they best fit in your project.
And maybe, Susanne, you can go with this one also. If you're a startup without revenue and financial records, can you still apply?
Yes, you can. You're early stage. If you have registered within the last before 6 months, before February 19th, then you can apply. You would ideally demonstrate a plan on how to get your co-financing in place. As I said, if your project is really viable and very interesting, and we take you forward through to investment committee stage, and we can also look at introducing you to some other investors who can potentially help you with the co-financing.
Okay, the next question I don't read it out. I'll just give the answer. Our financing is milestone based, and we pay it in milestones based on demonstrated progress and directly to the grantee. So we wouldn't disperse, for example, to your suppliers. You would receive the money and you would then have to procure and pay your partners and such. But it is a milestone based grant. Do you require applicant company registration in the same country as the project? Susanne, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, we like to see that. We like to see locally led projects and companies, locally driven. So fantastic if you have an entity within the country of the project. However, you can also demonstrate that local leadership through a local partner who is already on the ground. We have seen, especially during during the COVID-19 pandemic, that companies that had strong local teams on the ground through partners or themselves were much more resilient and likely to be successful than those that were purely led from abroad.
All right. The next question is the feasibility stage a must for a startup, or can one omit it and present the application for a grant as a pilot project? So this is not a progression. We have kind of the grantees or applicants can apply to a specific project that kind of fits their business model. So our feasibility studies, they are usually for bigger grid connected power plants, and then pilot products would just kind of pilot some kind of business model or like product on the ground. So it's not a kind of progression of one grant having a feasibility stage and then moving to a pilot stage. You apply to the stage that is relevant for your business. For cases of business development support needs, can the company suggest a particular business development support expert, or EEP Africa already has a roster of business development support experts? Susanne, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we do work with Open Capital Advisors as our BDS provider. They have extensive experience in supporting companies with capacity building, with training on investor pitch decks, etc. Doesn't mean that you can't propose your own provider. That is also an option. So we do have the option to also finance support from other third parties. We would decide that on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. The next question is about if we consider compost or briquettes as forms of energy, do we support such projects? So yes, let's say at least on a clean cooking side of things, quite a few of our projects have either pellets or briquettes as the kind of energy source. So yes, if they are used for then kind of energy production, then we can kind of support them. This one is I think this one is a bit too detailed to answer. We will then include some more on the questions. What if you are not financially stable? I guess that's our mandate, right? We wouldn't really. We expect you not to be. Let's put it this way. Otherwise, the grant would not be justified. So our grant is there to help you to get hopefully to a financially stable situation in the future, and often even in the end of your grant, you are not financially stable yet. You still might need to scale up, kind of attract additional technical assistance support or further equity or debt financing or even more grants to get to the scale that makes you financially stable. But our mandate is to help you with that kind of early risky part of your business. Do you provide a template that you'd want to see in the proposal that is a web-based kind of application that you will be submitting? So it's the same template for all So you don't need to kind of, the only thing that you need to have in hand was that list of documents that Susan shared on one of the slides. So some documents you need to upload to the portal, but the questions and what we are asking, that's all happens in the cloud. In case a grant has been used, but the FA, I'm not sure what that acronym is the company allowed to keep the FA after the end of the project? Is that assets, or what would FA mean? Maybe we'll skip that for now, since I'm not 100% sure on the acronym. I think we are getting towards the end of the list.
Fixed assets.
Oh, fixed assets. Okay. So yes. In case a grant has been used to buy fixed assets, is the company allowed to keep the fixed assets at the end of the project? So Susan?
Yes, they are. That is part of the whole purpose of the financing, that we can provide you with financing to get those assets, that you can keep using them and keep growing your business.
Does the business have to have a physical product, or can it be a fintech or app solution?
We are open to those solutions as long as there's a minimum viable product. We cannot finance other financing mechanisms. We have had projects in the past for example, data platforms, which we've taken quite far in the process, and that are supposed to support the deployment of physical assets. So that can be part of a project proposal, potentially. It really is, I can't give a blanket yes, but it can be part of the solution, yeah.
Next one is a specific request to Susan to give more light on what you just said about engaging consultancy partners. Does that ring a bell? Or yeah?
Yeah. So we had one specific case where we saw that a consultancy firm was part of the proposed partnerships, and their services would have fed into the project. However, it would make more sense, because it was quite a confined assignment, to have them budgeted under the external services, rather than having them as part of the personnel budget, for example. So that can also help you to balance your overall project budget. But this is also something that we're not going to disqualify you at the expression of interest stage, or even at the proposal stage. It's something that we'll then discuss with you on an individual basis to see how we can better balance your overall budget. I hope that makes sense.
The next question is about, is there any restrictions regarding financing staff costs? For instance, the staff cost needs will only be funded for management positions. So there are no kind of definite restrictions. It's again like what makes sense for your project. We can also finance other than management positions, but what we would be paying attention to is if the budget is balanced. So if, like, you know, half of your budget is staff costs, that wouldn't look kind of that great from the whole project level. So we are looking kind of a balanced budget over various cost categories, and also kind of co-financing, kind of cost sharing along those cost categories in a balanced manner, so that we share the risk throughout the project. Do you need any money up front? Susan, do you want to take that while I browse the other question?
Yeah, that goes back to the first question that we'd pre-answered. You don't need to have the co-financing in place on contract signature. What we do want to see is a clear pathway on where you're getting that co-financing from. We then need to, for example, through letters of intent from other financiers, through commitment letters from other grant funders, debt financiers, etc. Again, we can help you to also access some of those investors potentially once you are at that IC approval stage. We will only disburse money once you have demonstrated to us that you have the money in your account, that it is available, that we can verify it. We can't make any advance payments or disbursements without having that co-financing clearly in place.
The next question is about if a project without grant application process can be can receive financing, let's say, through kind of observational visits. So that's not possible. We are a challenge fund. We do application round, and it's equal treatment for all applicants. They all have to go through that same process. The next one is about in-kind support. Is in-kind support considered for 2025 commitments, or can include also 2024 commitments as well as, So practically, I guess, asking if we can look back with the in-kind contributions. So Susanne, you want to take that?
And yes, we can. We can look at expenses that have been incurred within 2 years of the contract start date. So again, we're quite generous there.
The next question is very specific again, like would you consider a project that uses solar thermal energy for heating and cooling despite of projects that have gone through your program that uses solar PV for cooling? Again, we cannot give a definite answer. This would be very case specific. We would need to see the application. Is it innovative? In which country it is? So any kind of specific question, can we finance this or that? The answer is pretty much similar. We are technology agnostic. As long as it's renewable energy or energy efficiency within our geographic region, then we'll assess it through the lens of innovation and additionality of our grant. And it may go through, it may not. It really depends then on the kind of competition that year and the degree of innovation and need for a grant. I think the next one will be the last question at the moment, unless more come in. We have 4 minutes left, so it might even be a good way to finish if no more questions come in. So for a new company, does bank account and proof of competent audit firm be sufficient for your risk analysis?
I'm not sure what is meant here.
I think those would be kind of items that might help our analysis, but it wouldn't be kind of the only things that we are looking at.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I think having a bank account is a must, otherwise we can't do disbursements. And not even all of our grantees or applicants have been audited. So the audit firm is not necessary, doesn't really, we are not looking at that. If you are a more mature company, then obviously we would expect that you've gone through some audits also and have them kind of available. But for early stage startups, many times there might not be kind of audit financial statements yet available. One more question came in, but I'm not assume you can't look back on co-financing through correct or to correct as need commitment on hand. I'm not sure I get the gist of that. Yeah.
I think you mean that you can look back on in-kind financing, but not on the co-financing.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah. Okay. Assume can't look back on co-financing to correct as need commitment on hand. Yeah, so I guess like if you're asking that you're pitching a project to us, then we wouldn't be able to look at historic co-financing. We would need to kind of see co-financing coming in for that specific project, and I think that's the.
It needs to be new.
Yeah, it needs to be new. Yeah. Yeah, and now there was a clarification for that. Thanks for that. Excellent. But I think that has been now the last comment or question in the list of questions that I've received. so I can save everybody 2 minutes of their time. And thank you for the good questions on my behalf. As mentioned, please read the project implementation manual, the call guidelines, the frequently asked questions once we publish them on the website during the call launch on the 19th. Once you read them thoroughly, I think many of the questions that we've answered here are already explicitly expressed there. But if any other questions come to your mind that you are not sure about, then there is a question function also on the cloud portal where you're going to apply for the funding. And we have a call for proposals email address, which will become active when the call is launched. Questions can be also submitted, but I highly recommend to use the portal function for submitting the question, because that's where most of us will be then working during the call. So you are more guaranteed to reach a quicker reply through that platform. But thank you on my behalf for everybody. We still have more than 100 on the line, so that's good to see that there is interest for our financing, and looking forward to getting a lot of strong applications from our focus countries.
Thank you, Jussi. Thanks, everyone.
And remember to tune in tomorrow if you are interested about, was it carbon financing or carbon credits, the topic for tomorrow. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, carbon financing for early stage companies and small companies. Very interesting session, so very much looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.